Well, hello. Today I'd like to tell you about Neil Postman's Amusing Ourselves to Death. This is a fun little book. The subtitle is Public Discourse in the Age of Show Business. And it's got an introduction by his son, Andrew Postman. So the book came out in 1983. And I think the obvious question you might very well ask yourself is, well, what does that book have to say to me today? Well, a lot, as it turns out. So hopefully I'll get into some of that. So what the book explores, actually, is the impact of electronic media on a democratic society. In 1983, the primary electronic media was television. Yes, there was radio, but television had pretty much taken over. So you might very well, again, what's that have to do with today? Well, we still have television, but we have a lot more media, including the medium through which you're watching me. This isn't television. This is YouTube. It's not real life. I'm performing. I am babbling because it's past 8 o'clock, so that's a problem with this, that television would have edited that out. But I don't care, I'm just going to keep going. So you're going to soon learn that the tools of television actually follow us into our modern world of cell phones and social media. And it does more, actually. Back then, there were portable televisions. My mother had one. It was, I don't know, about that wide, about this deep, about this tall, black and white. And toward the end, you kind of had to pound on it to get the picture to show up on the screen instead of snow, because there was something loose inside. But now, we've got our portable little distractions with us all the time. Unless you're like me and leave it in your bag and don't carry it in your pocket. Which horrifies my students, especially if it's quiet and they're taking a test and they hear, I don't have the alarm on or anything. I have it on silent mode, but it does vibrate if I get a text or I get a call. And they're like, aren't you going to check, see who it is? Nope. 3:15, then I'll check when school's out. And then I usually forgotten by then. So a classic story about the power of electronic media, which the book does talk about, is the Kennedy versus Nixon debate of the 1960 presidential election. Nixon at the time was vice president for outgoing President Dwight Eisenhower, and he had already used the power of television for his famous checkers speech, in which he claimed he was not a crook, and that, we did get one gift, and he pulls up a puppy, and we're keeping him. The puppy looked terrified. Nixon did not present well on TV. He was awkward. In his 1972 presidential campaign, he tried to put on a more informal demeanor as a man of the people when he ran for re-election. So his people arranged a photo shoot of him taking a casual stroll on the beach of San Clemente, California. And it backfired as he insisted on wearing his black wingtips on the beach, with the surf watching in and out, and the sand. So this is the man who went up against John Kennedy in the 1960 election and the first televised presidential debate. Now, after the debate, pollsters found an interesting dichotomy. Those who listened on the radio felt that Nixon had won the debate. Those who watched on television felt Kennedy had won. Now think about it for a minute. The visual dimension does nothing here, but think about what I've done here. I've got a carefully crafted set. I've got a light on in the back. Serves absolutely no purpose to this. It's just a light on in the back to make the set more three-dimensional. I have a lava lamp up there somewhere. I think I'm pointing at it. Just to provide a little bit of motion, but not to be the weird garish motion of this light, which I absolutely adore, but makes some of you crazy if I use it. And I've carefully set up some lights off screen here to evenly light my face to make myself look pretty. And I have enough separation from my background, so we've got just a hint of background blur, so I can make myself all pretty and stuff for a very, very small channel on YouTube. But I've thought through all that for the visual medium. My driving videos, I just get up to my microphone like this and talk into it, and I sound good, and I just brought that North Dakota scenery around, and I could just do a podcast. I don't even have to have that North Dakota scenery. It doesn't matter. Radio, you have to imagine. So let's talk about the visual dimension there. Nixon arrived to this debate exhausted because he'd been sick, and he was dealing with some health issues. Kennedy arrived well-rested and well-practiced because he locked himself in a hotel room and practiced over and over again. Kennedy looked at and addressed the camera, like I'm doing to you. Except when I look down at my notes because I'm too lazy and too cheap to buy a teleprompter. Because some YouTubers use teleprompters, not me. Nixon looked off camera to address the various reporters, which looks really awkward when your viewers are there. Kennedy was tanned and healthy looking. Nixon was pale, and he had kind of the same problem I do, fast-growing stubble. To cover his stubble, Nixon wore Lazy Shave, a drugstore pancake makeup, which is as awful as it sounds. Under the hot studio lights, because there were no LED lights like I have here, under the hot studio lights, he started to sweat, and the makeup just melted away, leaving visible beads of sweat. And of course, black and white, he's wearing a light gray suit, and it just blended in with the background. Kennedy was smart enough to wear, or at least aware enough, I should say, or had good advisors, to wear a dark suit that contrasted better. I don't think I'm contrasting well with my background, but moving on. So anyway, as Nixon later observed, a picture is worth 1,000 words. And this shows the power of the visual media to sway opinion. So Neil Postman, of course, he talks about this, but he goes a lot further than this. He suggests a sort of golden age of the written word. Before radio even. Compare the Lincoln-Douglas debates to modern presidential debates. Now, Neil Postman died before the 2016-2015 election. Does anybody remember Marco Rubio in the Republican primary debates and Donald Trump bringing penis size into the Republican primary? Yep. Penis size is important in picking out a president. We got all these middle-aged and elderly men. I'm just worried about what's hanging between their legs. So the level of discourse in the Lincoln-Douglas debates is quite a contrast. No penis sizes in sight. These are actually very lengthy arguments, although not recorded, worth noting, except in writing. They're very lengthy arguments with plenty of research and literary references. Nothing like the soundbite-oriented debates of today, and a lot longer. No one would watch these today. They're boring, but consider the time in which they take place. What do you have for entertainment? You don't have music, you don't have TV, you don't have radio, you don't have internet, and even books are kind of tough to get hold of. And life is a lot of work. So they're almost a welcome entertainment. So why aren't debates like this? So I'm recording this in 2022. I've seen debates where, discuss inflation. You have 15 seconds. Go. And then they ring the bell at the end of the 15 seconds. What am I going to say in 15 seconds? Absolutely nothing. I hate those kind of debates. At the same time, you don't want them going on at length and just saying nonsense. It would be nice if they'd answer the questions honestly, not try to beat around them, not try to avoid them, and just be direct. But can't work that way. And, instead of going for the sound bite, let's go for some lengthy policy. What are we going to do? And not the shouting over each other, interrupting each other, because, my God, that first debate between Trump and Biden, I just wanted to drop kick both of them. That was awful. So, I would just add, read older books versus those of today. The older books take a lot longer to get going, and readers went along with it. Today, books have to compete with the spectacle of television or movies. They need to grab attention right away. And what we're seeing as a result is a reduction in attention spans. Consider what television and now the internet do. Yes, they can bring some powerful pieces and information to us, but they also bring us a whole lot of nonsense and misinformation, and they are geared, for the most part, toward a short attention span. What is TikTok? I hate TikTok. Certainly it contains good stuff, I'm sure. I don't go on it, but I'm sure it does. But a lot of it is just ephemera and meaningless. Just, let's dance to this funky music and be all wooga wooga and get the beat going. Yeah. Great. Or Twitter. How do you lay out an intelligent thought in 140 characters? Look at television. Try to watch a lot of what you grew up with, especially if you're a little older like me. A lot of it just seems so silly now. And yes, there is some good stuff that was made back then. And we're going to look back on a lot of what's being made now and say, yipe. And yet there's good stuff being made right now. So I grew up when cable was kind of in its infancy. Most television was just a few networks that you would pick up with rabbit ears, or if you were more rural, a big antenna mounted on your roof or on a tower somewhere. And you watched whatever they put up. Phillips, Bleeps and Blunders, which was a real show. Hollywood Squares, The Price is Right, Growing Pains, Alice. And a lot of it was silly. And totally forgettable. Once in a while you'd get a very special episode that tried to dive deeper, but always in a very superficial way. Nothing messy, all sewn up in 30 minutes, with carefully timed commercial breaks. And what about the good stuff? So, this isn't an example of the good stuff. Down below in the video description, I have a link to an example of public discourse on important issues. Atheist blogger Hemant Mehta and televangelist Tony Perkins came on Fox News to discuss a Pew Research finding that faith and spirituality rank fourth in where Americans find meaning in life. I don't have a problem with that. I think a preacher and an atheist who have very different worldviews might spark some interesting conversation. If we're after conversation. But they only get a few minutes to do that. And then, after 3 minutes and 36 seconds, that includes the anchor diving into the fray, we switch to sex and gender. Two people, an atheist blogger and a televangelist. What the hell do they know about sex and gender? Neither one's a biologist, neither one's a psychologist, neither one's an evolutionary biologist. They are not experts. And yet, here we go. So we get the remaining 2 minutes to discuss this. 3 minutes and 36 seconds to discuss faith among Americans and why it's fourth. And then we jump to sex and gender for 2 minutes. What a vapid waste of time, where absolutely nothing is accomplished. Very shallow. We get a few sound bites, a very clearly biased anchor, and we can pretend like we got a deep discussion of two issues, but it was absolutely nothing. And the wrong people discussing it. And, to his credit, at least Hemant Mehta admitted that, hey, we're probably not the right people to be having this discussion. Preacher just dove in anyway. I got God on my side, so I know. So, had Neil Postman lived to see the present, he could have seen the rise of the meme as discussion. Never mind of delving into the complexity and the nuance and all the gray in an argument. Show him an image and a pithy phrase. That's enough. And for all the problems, compare the presidential debates of 1960 to those of today. And let's even set aside penis size, because I hope to God that's the only time in my life that gets brought up at a presidential debate or any debate ever. Republicans and Democrats, like I said earlier, were horrified by the first debate. We all agreed on that. But we turn it all into spectacle and entertainment. I'm told to be entertaining as a teacher. Learning is boring. So better to whip out the entertainment device in the topic. The written word can be trite or silly, but it is also open to deeper analysis and discussion, and more importantly, requires an active contribution from the reader. It's really easy to turn on an audiobook and get out your cell phone and just be like, oh, chapter's over? I wonder what that was about. So the electronic media definitely thrive on emotion, not deep analysis. And what Postman was really lamenting is the loss of this depth and analysis in our own culture. Any of you watch Doctor Who? I started watching that back in the 80s. I've watched a lot of the 1960s stuff all the way to the present day. I'll admit I'm kind of light on a lot of the present day stuff, but I do know who the current doctor is. It's a woman. Don't know her name, but she's a woman. Well, she doesn't have a name because it's Doctor Who, and we don't actually call her Doctor Who. She just call her the Doctor. So there we go. I don't have to know her name. But anyway, it's actually a silly BBC show for children. It was originally meant to be educational. They're supposed to have, 1 week would be history, the next week would be science and whatever. But compare the cultural references of the new and the old. The original version has references to Shakespeare and other classical literature. The new version has I ain't afraid of no ghosts, which is a Ghostbusters reference for those of you who are Luddites. And to be fair, the new version had a Shakespeare episode, and the cast high-five each other when they find out that Shakespeare is bisexual. Because, yeah, that's the important thing about him, who we think this man who's been dead for multiple centuries slept with. Not his clever writing, not his insights on humanity, what he does with his genitals. So we know the power of books. Postman brings up the power of Gutenberg's printing press. I got to do a driving video one of these days about a guy who was burned at the stake for the crime of translating the Bible into English. And with a book, you hold the wisdom of humanity in your hand. Or go on Twitter, see if Justin Bieber flashed his butt again. Now, I have melded the present a bit here with Mr. Postman's book because it truly is a timeless book. The big idea is that electronic media substitute entertainment for thought, and spectacle and emotion take over. We focus on social issues, not the big issues for our time that will impact us for generations. Why do you think there's such a focus on transgender and gay people right now? It gets people mad. That's it. Evolution isn't working anymore, so we got to dig up something new. Let's go after a different group. Oh, we can't, it's really not acceptable going after racial groups anymore? We'll just go after sexual minorities. But the important thing is it's a distraction from serious issues. Oh, can't afford health care? Wait, 2 men are getting married over there. Postman was definitely prescient. It's far worse than television and so much more banal. Kids sit in class worried about their streaks on Snapchat. When I grew up, streaks were totally different. Meaning, and you can look that what streaking is up. I won't get into that. They're worried about their streaks on Snapchat, their meaningless texts, silly games, and forget anything deeper. And yeah, I know they're kids. So what really scares me is the adults that are so distracted. So Postman saw this, and really, it's an Aldous Huxley type of future. Aldous Huxley wrote Brave New World, and one of the big things in Brave New World is people are just so distracted by all the entertainment and other things that they don't worry about the fact that they're living under a totalitarian government. And that may be what we're headed toward now. So, on that happy note, I want to thank you for watching. And let me know if you've read Neil Postman's book. Have you read any other good works on the rise of social media? Let us know. Maybe there's some good in it. I don't know. Let us know down in the comments. So I want to thank you for watching. We'll talk to you later. Bye-bye.